Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. Michael Noland here. Tonight we're going to discuss the the Rolling Stones, the world's greatest rock band? Hey, that's what they've claimed over the years. Let's discuss whether that's true or not. You know, I've had this love-hate relationship with the Rolling Stones, well, basically right from the beginning. I admit it, I'm a Beatles fan. And back then, you were either a Beatles fan or you were a Stones fan. I happen to be one of those who fit somewhere in the middle, leaning heavily into the Beatles camp. You know, it's the Beatles that quite literally showed the Rolling Stones how to write a song. It was John Lennon and Paul McCartney spending about 10 to 20 minutes in a corner right in front of the Rolling Stones writing the song I Want to Be Your Man. And you know, it's true. The early career of the Rolling Stones meant a whole lot of copying of exactly what the Beatles did prior to them. The Beatles write a riff-oriented pop top 10 song. The Stones replied in kind. The Beatles give us Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, and the Stones give us, well, you know what. Despite that, both Mick Jagger and Keith Richards turned out to be a great songwriting team. The Stones wrote some great top 10 hits, but you know, the first time that I heard them in their own voice, or at least in my opinion, Honky Tonk Woman. You know, that's one of the best 45s ever recorded in history. I'm not just talking about the song itself, it's wonderful. It's one of those rare singles like Michael Jackson's Beat It that somehow rides above the single itself. What an amazing song. Now, we get to that time period where the Beatles calls it quits, and there's really no one to take the first step forward for the Stones. After all, they pretty much relied on the Beatles for that. Brian Jones, as far as I'm concerned, the true genius of the early Stones, was gone. Well, maintaining their five-man lineup, they brought on Mick Taylor for guitar duties. You know, I think it's in the Mick Taylor incarnation of the Stones where the Stones were truly at their greatest. It was during this period that many people thought that the Stones had finally arrived. But as usual in rock and roll, all good incarnations must come to an end. You know, it's at this point that they bring on Ron Wood of Faces fame, also Jeff Beck, one of rock and roll's famous session players who always seemed to show up on the very best tracks. Now, Ron brought a lot of energy into the band, but here we see that their creative flow starts to slow down a bit. You know, it seemed at this time, although each album containing brilliant tracks, they just couldn't put out an album that was clearly seen by the masses as a masterpiece. That is until, in my opinion, Bridges to Babylon. You know, I've got to say, I think this is my favorite Rolling Stones album. When it came out, I couldn't believe they had put out such a wonderful artistic statement all on one album, as good as anything that had come out for the Stones in previous decades. Of course, the Stones would continue to tour and occasionally show bits of brilliance with things like A Bigger Bang, and recently, the best rock and roll single I've heard in years, Living in a Ghost Town. Of course, it was in 2021 when the Stones perhaps returned to touring, a bit prematurely, that Charlie Watts died. And with all due respect to Ron Wood, as far as I'm concerned, that leaves us 2 out of 5 Rolling Stones left to perform. Now that's another thing, and we're going to be discussing this tonight in tonight's video. Why didn't they make Daryl, their bass player, a full-time member? They had done it for Mick, they had done it for Ron, after having to replace their original lead guitarist, Brian Jones. Well, I think the answer to that, actually, you have to go back a decade or two before. You see, it's right after the Beatles quitting, kind of almost leaving the #1 spot, at least in tradition, to the Rolling Stones, where they started kind of trademarking themselves as the world's greatest rock band, complete with a lips and tongue sticker. Now, what is this? This is almost a corporate move. And you know, it's from this point in their development where I start seeing a more corporate approach to even being a Rolling Stone, and certainly in their approach to concerts, charging for concerts, seating arrangements for concerts, the whole shebang. You know, I've talked about having love-hate relationships with some of these bands. I love this band, but I really hate this over here about them, right? If there's the one thing I can't stand about the Rolling Stones, it is, as they've aged, their energies have been more and more focused on what they can make on a tour than what they can produce as true rock artists. You know, as I've already stated, this band has put out some amazing artistic statements, even quite recently. But you know, it's been obvious to me since around Bigger Bang, every single time they show up, they're less tight, they're less professional, they have less energy, and yes, I know the band is aging. But folks, this happens to us all. We all have to make a decision when we bow out of being active in whatever part of our lives that we can no longer be active in. But you know, it's not just the fact that this band has gotten less tight live over the last few years. They are beginning to hobble on stage. I just saw a video where Ron Wood hobbles over to Keith Richards and actually has to wave him visually to follow him so they can do some rock and roll jaunt over by Mick, who's busy singing. Embarrassing. Now, I know I'm an older rock fan, and you would think I'd be a lot more forgiving, especially for the Rolling Stones. But you know what? I will never let my age or my generation identify my musical taste or my expectations of past icons who are making a fool of themselves. When I do reach that period, folks, that'll be time for me to retire. Now, I know Keith Richards has proven many times that he is invulnerable to just about anything short of atomic warfare. You can't supply this guy with enough drugs to kill him. And in the past, he had anti-tank missiles to launch just by his approach in his guitar playing. He's not one of the greatest guitar players in rock, but as far as I'm concerned, he is one of the best riff masters in rock. But nowadays, when you watch him, he's playing with the arrangements. Now, you would think I'd like that because I've said so in past videos. Look, if they're gonna play the same songs, let's change them up. Give us something that we haven't heard. But these days, when you see him taking a different approach, what do we hear? Very sloppy guitar playing. Ron Wood's no better. As a matter of fact, the best stuff playing live at a Rolling Stones rock concert is the backing band. They're great. Now, at Mick Jagger's age, his voice is fine. First of all, the man never had the greatest voice in rock and roll. He had a good enough voice for the Rolling Stones, and it had a character, and it continues to show character. At this point, I think I'd just rather see Mick Jagger tour and play whatever he wants for a lower ticket price, and then I'll go see him. I will not go see this band in this condition. My, how the mighty have fallen, and they're doing so willingly. I am so tired of having rock icons wheeled on stage, sitting on stage, hobbling out on stage. It's embarrassing. What a joke. You know, part of live performance is the visual element of it, folks. You know, what I see is these old geezers that are hunched over because their Stratocaster's too heavy for them to play. And where is this Rolling Stones promised album? Tour, 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 no album. Same old problem from the last 20 years, and one of our original rock bands can't rise above those meager expectations. Give me a freaking break. Now, we've talked about bands charging way too much. I've criticized Paul McCartney for $1,000 or more tickets. I've criticized Bruce Springsteen for $5,000 tickets. And if there were any acts that are even close to the majesty of these two artists, it would be the Rolling Stones. Are they worth the price of admission? No, I don't think so. First of all, Mick sounds great, he's still giving a great show, but Ron and Keith hobbling around on stage is not a visual delight. Now, for you Stones fans who think I've been a little bit too critical of the Stones here, please understand this. They are on my so-called Mount Rock Olympus of bands. I only have 13 bands on that list, but I gotta tell you folks, the Rolling Stones is the one band that sits uneasily on Mount Rock Olympus, or at least for me. They have been sometimes the most brilliant music out that week, that month, sometimes even that year. And they have also been quite a yawn fest at times over the years. Icons of rock, absolutely. Artistic masters, yes, at times. Fodder for our weekly gossip columns, always. And, of course, the original bad boys of rock. All right, folks, so that covers my video for today. This is just a pre-video warm-up. I'm actually shooting 2 videos today. I'll be shooting my next Led Zeppelin Decoded video right after this. This video will probably hit you a couple of days before that one. You know, when I went to go see Paul McCartney and Wings back in the 70s at the Cow Palace with my wife and my former bass player, he was a major Rolling Stones fan and didn't even want to go to that concert. Now, David had just been playing bass for a couple of years, and I felt like the rock concert would do him good. On our way home, we're heading north over the Golden Gate Bridge, and he said to me, just out of nowhere, my God, I had no idea McCartney was, first of all, that loud and could rock that well. You know, he had seen the Stones before, and he was impressed by even one Beatle. All right, so the names you see in front of me, of course, are brand new subscribers. Like I've said before, I always try to give a shout out at the end of my videos. For you who have shared my videos, I want to thank you very much. That has been a major part of why this channel has grown so quickly over the last few months. If you got anything out of this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up. That helps the YouTube algorithm better identify the channel to a larger audience. And of course, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please just hit that subscribe to the tribe button, hit that top bell notification, and you will be notified of all my future videos. All right, so that about covers it tonight. I'm Michael Nolan, this is The Bottom Line, and I'll see you in my next video.